Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Rajadandarandana Yashodanandana Rajadandarandana Yamuna Tira Vanatari Yamuna Tira Vanatari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjabi Hari ISKCON Guruvanda Ki, Sri Prabhupada Ki, Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Okay, so continuing reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, the one volume edition. This is coming to the end of the last chapter called The Last Instruction. Srila Prabhupada had already expressed his surrender in the prayer he had given his disciples to offer on his behalf. My dear Lord Krishna, if you desire, please cure Srila Prabhupada. By the phrase, if you desire, he was reminding his followers of the supreme prerogative of Krishna and was asking them to abide by it, although he was also giving them an acceptable way to petition Krishna. In a similar case in 1967, he had given his disciples another prayer, my master has not finished his work. He has said then that Krishna had responded to this prayer, granting the wishes of the devotees. Srila Prabhupada himself was responding to the devotee's prayer, and Krishna had given him the choice. But as a surrendered soul, Srila Prabhupada waited for further developments, ever sensitive to Krishna's desire. As Prabhupada had said, when invited by Kirtanananda to come to his place in New Vrindavan, let us see which palace I am going to. So with that, he means whether it's New Vrindavan Palace or the palace in original Vrindavan in the spiritual sky. As a living tension can sometimes exist between the Supreme Lord and his pure devotee, so now a similar tension existed between Srila Prabhupada and his followers. Prior to his disciples' desperate petition at his bedside, Srila Prabhupada had seen his duty as instructing his disciples in how to die. Part of his mission was to set the perfect example in this most important lesson, how to pass life's ultimate test. But now his disciples were asking him to postpone the lesson in dying and stay with them indefinitely in the preaching field. And Prabhupada had agreed, showing that he had the ability to live if he chose. But sooner or later he would have to return to the lesson of how a person should face the end of life. One special feature of Srila Prabhupada's activities in his relating intimately to the human condition, while at the same time remaining always aloof and transcendental as a pure devotee. He was not subjected to the law of karma. As a pure devotee, he was not subject to the law of karma, which awards reactions for pious and sinful deeds. He was not born by the force of karma, nor would he die by the force of karma. As stated by Srila Rupa Goswami, one whose body, mind, and words are fully engaged in devotional service to Lord Krishna is the liberated soul, even while living in this world. People often misunderstand the movements of a pure devotee within the material world, just as one on seeing clouds blowing past the moon may think the moon is itself moving. The Shastra therefore warns us never to see the Guru as an ordinary man subject to karma. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Temple 7, Chapter 1, entitled The Lord is the Key to Everyone. Matriswasreyo Vash Chaidyo Matriswasreyo Vash Chaidyo Dantavakras Cha Pandava Dantavakras Cha Pandava Parshada Pravaro Vishnur Parshada Pravaro Vishnur Viprasapat Padachuto Viprashapat Padachuto Matriswashreyo Vaschaidio Dantavakrascha Pandava Parashada Pravaro Vishnor Viprashapat Padachuto Matriswashreyo Vaschaidio Dantavakrascha Pandava Parashada Pravaro Vishnor Viprashapat Padachuto Matriswashreyo Vaschaidio Dantavakrascha Pandava Parashada Pravaro Vishnor Viprashapat Padachuto. Let's chant. Ladies. Matriswashreya son of the mother's sister, Shishupal, Va, your Chaitya, King Shishupal, Dantavakra, Cha, and Pandava, O Pandava, Parshada Pravaro, two exalted attendants, Vishnu of Vishnu, Vipra by Brahmanas, Shapat because of a curse, Sada from their position in Vaikuntha, Chito fallen. Translation. Narada Muni continued, O best of the Pandavas, your two cousins, Shishupal and Dantavakra, the sons of your maternal aunt, were formerly associates of Lord Vishnu, but because they were cursed by Brahmins, they fell from Vaikuntha to this material world. Please repeat. Narada Muni continued, O best of the Pandavas, your two cousins, Shishupal and Dantavakra, the sons of your maternal aunt, were formerly associates of Lord Vishnu, but because they were cursed by Brahmins, they fell from Vaikuntha to this material world. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Shishupal and Dantavakra were not ordinary demons, but were formerly personal associates of Lord Vishnu. They apparently fell to this material world, but actually they came to assist the Supreme Personality of Godhead by nourishing his pastimes within this world. Om Agyanatimarandasya Gyanatimaslakaya Chakshunmalatamina Tasma Shigurave Namaha Kam Karoti Vachalam Pagam Lagate Grim Yakripatamam Vande Shri Taranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Narada Muni continued, at best of the Pandavas, your two cousins, Shishupal and Dantavakra, the sons of your maternal aunt, were formerly associates of Lord Vishnu, but because they were cursed by Brahmins, they fell from Vaikuntha to this material world. So interesting, a few words here. The first word is Matri Swashriya. So this word Matri, you can see the origin of the word matriarch, just like we have patriarch. So Sanskrit is the origin of so many words which we just take for granted in our language. So this Matri Swashriya means the son of the mother's sister, referring to Shishupal. So Shishupal and Dantavakra were, as mentioned here, they weren't ordinary demons. Kali Yuga is considered that everyone is little demons, little Hiranyakashipu. So we're coming to a very interesting part of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Of course, it's all interesting, but this is particularly interesting to devotees because we're now approaching the appearance of Lord Nrsingadev, and the glorification of not only Lord Nrsingadev, the half-man, half-lion incarnation, but the the glorification of Prahlad Maharaj, great devotee of the Lord. And the main point in that whole pastime is that Krishna is Bhakta Vatsala. He will protect his devotee. So in this pastime, which we're about to hear soon, Shishupal and Dantavakra, which are mentioned here, who were formerly Jai and Vijay in the spiritual world, and by some arrangement they were cursed to enter into the material world. They had the choice to take birth 7 times as devotees, which they thought would be very relishable, but they were considering the other option, which was to take birth 3 times as the Lord's enemies. And they were thinking, okay, well, it'd be nice to be taking birth 7 times as devotees, but if we take birth 3 times as the enemy of the Lord, then we can get back quickly to our service. Okay, let's do that. Just after a quick confab, then they announced, okay, we'll take birth 3 times as your enemies. So first of all, they took birth as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, and then Ravana and Kumbhakarna, and then as Shishupal and Dantavakra, and each time they satisfied the Lord by engaging in some fighting pastimes. Just like sometimes children, they have dummy fights, isn't it? Did anyone ever do that when they were young? You have dummy fights. And then sometimes it gets a bit too serious, and then the parents have to break it up because someone doesn't know how to have a dummy fight. So these things are kind of natural. And that fighting spirit, when it's not abused, then it's a sporting thing. It doesn't harm anybody. So the Lord, He does so many different things in one go. We are very finite in our intelligence, but when Krishna does something, He achieves so many things at one time. He fulfills the desires of His devotees. He annihilates the miscreants and liberates them, and He reestablishes Dharma. So this is generally the appearance of the Lord. These 3 things are achieved. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya chaduskritam dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. Paritranaya sadhunam, the sadhus are the devotees, then He saves them, He rescues them, and He delivers them. Vinashaya chaduskritam, and Vinash, He annihilates the duskritina. Duskritinas means the miscreants, those who are acting against laws of nature, laws of God. Dharma samstapanartaya. So He reestablishes the principles of Dharma. When human society on the whole has deviated from Dharmic principles, then He descends to reestablish them, to create peace for the whole of society. Right now, on this world, on a daily basis, millions of animals are being slaughtered, and people looking for peace. How is that possible? So it's only when we put the source of everything in the center, then is everything going to be peaceful. So this peace formula Sri Prabhupada mentions is based on the verse of Bhagavad Gita, Bhoktaram Jagatapasam Sarvaloke Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvabhutanam Gatvamam Shantim Richati. So Bhoktara Jagatapasam, of all sacrifices I am the only enjoyer. So while we're trying to enjoy, we're only secondary enjoyers. When we try to enjoy on our own, then we incur karma. But if we enjoy, just like every day, even the devotees are eating, and they're not eating cornflakes or Weetabix or fried egg or something like that. They're eating wonderful foodstuffs every day, isn't it? Even tomorrow in Ekadashi, where some devotees actually fast, and for many years the devotees here fasted altogether, no food, no water. But now Ekadashi is like a feast. It doesn't seem very austere at all. But the devotees can voluntarily fast. They fast from grains, at least. But we're, even on every Sunday, we have a feast. And who has that? Apart from the devotees, who's having this Sunday feast? Maybe people have their Sunday roast, but they're just this big lump of karma sitting on the table. And soon they're going to be sitting on the table. And I was just watching the other day, there was one big truck going past. I was going to Edinburgh, and there was a big truck going past. I was thinking, okay, at this point in time, there's the humans running around in cars, stopping off to get hamburgers and whatnot from the fast food joints. Meanwhile, the trucks of the animals are passing by, but soon then these roles will be reversed. They won't be stopping off to get a hamburger, they'll be in the other truck. And it's really sad because that ignorance is causing the suffering of so many living entities. and it is also causing the future suffering of the humans. So this transcendental knowledge, see, being a vegetarian is one thing, but it's not simple enough, because even at that, then it's not being offered to Krishna, so it's still taking without offering and sacrifice. But if we take what is offerable to Krishna and offer it to him, then there's no karma involved, and we liberate those living entities who are involved in that. So in this way, the Sankirtan movement is considered all auspicious, because it's not just limited to benefiting the human beings. Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. So if we can understand that there are so many controllers in this world, including ourselves, even the kids, right? The kids have got some control. Sometimes they're gaining control, sometimes the parents take control. But we all have some ability to control. But our control is very limited, and then someone may have more control than us, and then sometimes people resent if there's someone above them who has some control over them, especially if they don't like so many different things, because we're unable to accept things as they are, unable to tolerate. But if we can understand, okay, everyone has some control, and some have more control than us, some have less control than us, but ultimately Krishna has more control than anybody. He's controlling the planets. He's controlling the demigods who are controlling the planets. He delegates the responsibility of the material world to the demigods, and they're just given a job to do. And they do the job, and that's it. And as soon as we enter into this world, then we have to play the game of karma. We roll the dice, and then it determines our next move. But when we approach Krishna directly, then sometimes we can get a reprieve, we can get a pardon from this karmic reaction. Just like sometimes you park your car somewhere where you shouldn't, you get a ticket, but if you write into one of the more senior persons with some mitigating circumstances, they might say, okay, this time we'll let you off. So, or sometimes you see, of course, the devotees shouldn't flout the laws of nature, but sometimes you see, I've seen one YouTube clip, where one woman is stopped by the police. This is in America, and the policeman's booking her for speeding, and she's kind of yelling at him, "Do you know who I am?" And he says, "Do you know who I am? I'm a policeman, and you're speeding." So she's trying to flaunt the laws because she is the wife of some senator or something like that, and thinks that the laws don't apply to her. So devotees shouldn't think like that we're devoted of Krishna, so the laws don't apply to us. We still have to observe. And Suridam Sarva Bhutanam. Sarva means all, and Bhutanam means the living entities. Suridam. I'm the well-wishing friend of everyone, not just a friend, but he's the ultimate well-wishing friend of everyone who fulfills everyone's desires. So he can fulfill our desires. So that doesn't mean you say, okay, we'll go to Krishna today and we'll stand here in front of Krishna and say, okay, I want to look at my bank balance in 10 minutes and find £1 million in there. And then we'll look and think, nah, it doesn't work. Krishna's not God. He's not our order supplier. But the desires he will fulfill according to our karma and according to our intention. If we are sincerely want to break free from the law of karma and become a devotee and return back to him, then Krishna will make all facilities for those desires to be fulfilled. If we want to remain in the material world, then he'll allow that to happen, and then the details of that are up to us. That's then a contract between us and the material energy. But if we want to break that contract, then we can go directly to Krishna and Krishna's representatives who will vouch for us. Just like sometimes we apply for some grants, and part of the criteria for getting those grants is sometimes they want to see who else is giving you grants. So if you've got recommendations, you can say, okay, Tesco gave us this, and the Co-op gave us that, and Arnold Clark gave us this, etc. I'm not doing an advertisement for all these guys. Personally, I'm not getting paid for doing this. And they say, oh, well, that's good. These guys are reputable, so you must be okay. So then they don't scrutinize you as stringently as if you had no history whatsoever. So similarly, if we make nicer relationships with Krishna's devotees, especially through service, and then Krishna is attracted to that. He's drawn to us. So although Krishna is all attractive, he is attracted by pure devotional service. So this is a peace formula, that to recognize that Krishna is the supreme proprietor, supreme controller, and the well-wishing friend of everyone. So although he owns everything, and although he's all-pervasive, then he's not a miser. And he's always ready to facilitate the living entities, especially if they want to return to him. So in the purport here, Prabhupada says they were not ordinary demons. So there are many demons or living entities who take on some demoniac spirit, and they try to create some problems. But these demons in particular were very, very powerful because they were actually Vaikuntha devotees. And they came for a particular purpose, to engage in the pastimes of the Lord. And at the end of this purport, there's a word, pada chuto. They fell because of a curse from Vaikuntha. Chuto, so chuta means fallen, and Krishna is known as Achuta, that he never falls. Also, this is mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, Janma Karma Chame Divyam, that one who knows the Janma, birth, and karma activities of the Lord doesn't take birth again in this material world. So generally it's considered that when you're returned to the spiritual world, then you don't fall back. But they had, Prabhupada says in the purport, they apparently fell to this material world. But actually they came, it says, to assist the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Lord is always surrounded by loving devotees, and sometimes these living devotees, when they come to the material world, they take part in the pastimes as his friends, as his devotees, family, etc. And sometimes they actually take birth as his enemies, and they give some interesting flavour to the pastimes. So just like years ago, you had this drama troupe which was travelling around the world, and they were performing the Mahabharata. It was like world-class, highly professional thing. And I met Duryodhan in Byers Road once. I think I was selling Bhagavad Gitas. He says, yeah, I'm Duryodhan. And I thought, who's this loony? He says, no, I'm taking part in the Mahabharata. I'm playing that part. And he was a very friendly person, very nice guy from Argentina. And obviously he's just playing the part. And Duryodhan wasn't such a nice guy. He was quite a demon. He was very much opposed to the Pandavas and Krishna as well, despite all sorts of attempts at Krishna to appease Duryodhan and to mediate and negotiate. Then Duryodhan wouldn't even give enough land to, what was it he said? To stick a pin in. He wouldn't even give the Pandavas enough land to stick a pin in, even though it was their right to it. So, yeah, it just made me realize that these devotees who are taking part in the Lord's pastimes, after these pastimes, they're not enemies any longer. So just like Duryodhana and Arjuna taking part in this drama afterwards, they won't necessarily have the same enmity. Because they're just playing the part. So the difference between Krishna and ourselves is he's achyuta, that he never falls because he's never under the influence of anything. If there was something to be under the influence of, then that would mean that that would be superior. That would be superior to Krishna, then that would be God, wouldn't it? So does that mean that Krishna can fall into Maya? So this philosophy of Mayavadi, where the living entity falls into the material world, is subject to illusion, but ultimately we're all part and parcel. We're all part and parcel of God, and we're all one, and we're all God. This is a Mayavadi philosophy, that the living entity is God, but part of God falls into Maya. So it's really only half a philosophy. It's not a complete philosophy, because the living entity is part of God, but achintya bheda bheda tattva. We're simultaneously one with God and different from God. Just as much as a drop of water from the ocean is simultaneously the ocean and not the ocean. If I get a jam jar and I fill it with water from the North Sea and I bring it in here and I say, "Watch out, everybody! The North Sea is coming into the temple," and they're going to look at me and think, "It's a bit nuts. That's not going to drown us." So it is. We have the North Sea in a jar, but we're not going to drown in it. We're not going to freeze to death, if we stick our toe in there. But if you fall into the North Sea, you've got about 2 minutes, if you're lucky, before you survive, isn't it? It's so cold. Similarly, we are part and parcel of Krishna, but we're not Krishna because we have the ability to fall into illusion. So there's 3 different Shaktis or energies, 3 different categories. Shishikodantai Prashashiki. So there's the Antaranga Shakti, which means the internal. Antar. That word internal comes from Antar. The Antaranga Shakti, which means the superior energy, which is never subject to the influence of the Bahiranga Shakti, the external energy. Just like we chant, Bahir Nisingho, Hridaye Nisingho. Bahir means the Lord is outside, but he's also inside. And then we have the Tatastha Shakti. Tatastha Shakti is us, that we are marginal potency. We're between, we are spiritual by nature, part and parcel of God like that. But also we have the ability to come under the influence of the spiritual energy, the Antaranga Shakti, or the Bahiranga Shakti, the external energy. So depending on which one we take shelter in, that's the influence we have. So therefore Krishna says, if we want to become free from all karmic reactions, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja Mamikam Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Moksha Yashimamasuchaha. Then he says, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja, abandon all varieties of religion. So by that, it doesn't mean to say become irreligious. What he means is all these different types of family dharma, this dharma, that dharma, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Dharma, artha, kama, moksha means one is interested in religiosity, dharma, artha, economic development, kama, sense gratification, and moksha, liberation. One should give up all interest in all these things and just directly surrender to him. And regardless of whatever types of rituals or religious obligations we think we have, if we just give that up and directly go to him, then he will protect us from all types of sinful reactions, all types of karmic reactions. And do not fear. So he adds, do not fear, because sometimes we're afraid to give up things thinking that we're going to lose. And according to different cultures that we come from, then we may have different attachments, we may have different fears of giving them up. Sometimes we fear giving up our material security. Sometimes we fear giving up our friends, family, sense gratification, or we have fears giving up our family, religion. But Krishna says, if you come to me, everything will be satisfied, everything will be resolved in that. You have no need to fear any reaction because I'm not answerable to anybody. So if we go to Krishna, then who can challenge us? He's Achyuta, he's unconquerable, he's infallible, Achintya. So we just have to have that little faith. And if we practice that, then Krishna will reciprocate so that that faith becomes stronger. And then it becomes knowledge. So just like if you want to go on a journey, so we're going to Rath Yatra on Saturday and Sunday. And unless you're going to walk it there, then you're probably going to get a bus or a train or a car or jump in the minibus with us. But if you think, I don't know if I trust this vehicle, I wouldn't be surprised. The amount of things that go wrong with them. But you think, well, I'd have to walk it, so you better start walking maybe tomorrow and be prepared to sleep rough on the way over for a couple of nights. But we put a little faith in. Every time we step in the car, we put some faith in it, to the point where we're doing it so regularly we don't even think about it. We just know that if I just jump in the car, it's going to get us to the other side. And the whole thing is kind of depending on so many things being in order, such as all it takes is for one of the tires to have no air in it, and then you're not going to go very far. Or one component fails, and then we're not going to go very far. But still, we put our faith in it, we get it fixed, and we carry on. Because we know in principle the vehicle is going to get us there. So this Krishna conscious movement is going to get us back to Krishna. And in the effort to practice Krishna consciousness, we may have some obstacles. But we shouldn't let the obstacles get in the way. That when we become focused on the obstacles, then we take our mind off the goal. Just like if anyone's running a race and they're doing the hurdles, right? You see the 200-meter hurdles. They're not looking at the hurdles, they're looking at the end, the finish line. And then even if they knock over a hurdle, they don't stop to pick it up and then start getting all like teary-eyed about it. Oh no, I've knocked over a hurdle, what a mess. Or look at my shin, I just scratched up. They don't feel any pain, they just keep running until they get to the end. So the same for devotees, we want to fix our mind on the goal. Ekeha Karunandana, single-pointed determination. Bhogeshvaya prasaktanam tayaparita chetasam vyave sayatmika buddhir ekeha Karunandana. Is that the right verse, or have I mixed two up? That is it, isn't it? Yeah. Sometimes you get mixed up. I noticed even Prabhupada would do that because Prabhupada actually could read, write, and speak Sanskrit. So for him, sometimes you see the translation of the verse is different. So, Bhogeshwarya Prasaktanam. So, Bhoga and Aishwarya. Bhoga means sense enjoyment, Aishwarya means material opulence. So, if we become too attached to Bhoga, to sense enjoyment, and Aishwarya, material opulence, then the resolute determination to perform devotional service doesn't take place. So, this is a little caution for us not to become too attached, because these things come our way by our karma or by Krishna's mercy. We may get some bhoga, we may get some enjoyment. But if our devotional service means that we're experiencing some enjoyment, then so be it. We're not going to deny it. But if in the course of performing our devotional service there's some austerity, then we continue doing that as well. So Ekeha, Eka means one, single-pointed. Ekeha, Kurunandana. Kurunandana means, O beloved child of the Kurus, of the Kuru dynasty, Arjuna. And of course, this is the lessons he's given to Arjuna, or for us. So Krishna is encouraging not to take our mind off the goal. And the enjoyment which we're intended to experience anyway in this life will come. It will come anyway. But we should be encouraged not to become too attached to it, otherwise, matrasparshastikante shutosna sukadukada agamapaino just tamstatiksha shovarata. The non-permanent appearance and disappearance of happiness and distress are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception of sign of Bharat, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So it's a very good lesson. If we could learn even just that one lesson in this lifetime, that'd be such a great achievement, wouldn't it? To learn to tolerate without being disturbed. Not just to learn to tolerate, but without the disturbing part. And to see them as temporary interactions of the material world. So this is the vision of a sage, just to see the material world acting and not be affected by it. And not that we become callous or heartless, but that we see through the eyes of Shastra or scripture, called Shastra Chakshu. We see through eyes of knowledge. So in 1988, we embarked on this program called Every Town and Village. Now, Lord Chaitanya, 500 years ago, said that in every town and village, my name will be heard. And when Srila Prabhupada arrived in 1965 at Boston Harbour, he wrote this prayer, Markini Bhagavat Dharma, where he said, the holy name of Gauranga will be heard in every town and village. So this was our mission, to go to every town and village in Scotland and north of England, especially Scotland. We were concentrating on that. The Highlands, the islands, and we put a small booklet through every door, and we did every town and village within practical possibility. The only place we didn't go to was the Shetland Islands, but we went to practically all the other islands, etc. So on that first year, there was one devotee with me who was from Holland. Anyone here ever been to Holland, Netherlands? You've been? It's quite flat, isn't it? And you see, it's called the Netherlands because anybody? Because nether means like sub, right? It means below. Nether regions, Netherburn. It means lower or below. And that's because a lot of the land in the Netherlands is reclaimed from the sea. The world known for building dikes. Even many of their names are Van Dyke, right? Dike means a wall. So they have these walls which hold back the sea, and then they reclaim land from the sea. They're world-renowned engineers for this kind of thing, building dams and dikes to hold back water. Anyway, this devotee was traveling with us, and he practically, in Holland, he says there's practically no hills there. So we were touring the north of Scotland, and it was so beautiful. There's so many lochs and islands and hills that he was, at every moment, he was going, wow, 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 wow. And I was thinking, he's just really getting enamored by this temporary material manifestation. And I thought, well, it's nice, and obviously he's quite excited. He's not used to seeing such nice countryside, and it is a great gift of God to see that. But seen through the eyes of Shastra Chakshu, then I quoted one verse that says, Jivo Jivasya Jivanam. That was a bit of a killjoy, actually, because he was trying to enjoy it, and I thought, this enjoyment is enamoring him too much. He's a young bhakta. And so he said, what does that mean? I says that one living entity is food for another. We're enjoying looking at this nice countryside, but if you look closely, you see everyone's eating each other. This is what's going on. This is how the whole world subsists. This is how it continues. So to see the reality of it, and Prabhupada also says, whatever beautiful things you see in this material world, whether it be a person or a place or a phenomena, he says, understand that this is only a very dim reflection of the beauty in the spiritual world. And that's it's good to know that, because then we don't become so enamored that we're trying to make this place our home, this temporary material world our home. Because we have another home where we belong. Even if you try to make a home, sometimes people are successful materially. They get good job, good pay, nice family, nice friends, nice society, and they're joining all the local clubs, they're joining the tennis club or the golf club or whatever, and they feel very comfortable. But ultimately, what's going to happen is time will come along and remove it all. So sorry if I'm raining on anyone's parade, but that's the fact of it. And it's good that we realise that now, isn't it? Rather than at the end of it go, oh no, what have I done? I forgot that I was supposed to be doing something else with this life. So better to wake up now voluntarily than to have a rude awakening at the end of this life and think, well, I could have done more with my life for myself because everything I've built is getting left behind. Now I'm going somewhere else. I don't know where I'm going. So this fear of death is fear of the unknown. Death itself is a very quick thing. Even if it takes some time to die, the act of actually just dying, leaving the body, it just happens very quickly. But it's what we're afraid of is what comes after that. And the living entity by nature is known as Satchid Ananda, eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. So if we can understand our own nature first, then we can understand what is God's nature, that we are eternal individuals. We don't die. We are looking for bliss, Anandamaya, we're looking for bliss. And we're not finding it in the things of the material world. We're often given a promise. If you get this new piece of clothing or this nice bag or this nice car or bicycle or some other improvement in life will be better. Even the devotees, they just think, if I can have just one nice sari or one nice dhoti or one chadar. They say that even sannyasis, they can become attached to their water pot. Just we see this picture of Sadbhuj. Lord Chaitanya, he's got the 2 arms of Lord Ram with the bow and arrow, the green arms, the 2 arms of Krishna with the flute, and the 2 arms of Lord Chaitanya, which is the Kamandalu, the water pot, and the danda, the sannyasi's staff. But they say that even a sannyasi can become attached to his own water pot. It's all we have, but we may have, like they say, the pauper or the poor person is proud of their penny. They may only have 1 penny, but they're so attached to it. All their attachment is focused on that 1 penny. So it's not so much what we have and what we don't have, it's the spirit of how we utilize that, how we see it. How we see it will determine how we utilize it. So if we can understand that actually, this verse we're saying, Bhoktaram Jagatapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. So Sarvaloka Maheshwaram means that Krishna, being the supreme controller above all other controllers, then he is the supreme proprietor. And whatever we have is simply just temporarily in our possession. So when I was a Bhakta back in Chaitanya College, 1983-84, then they showed us this movie. There was 4 ladies from Australia had been regressed through hypnosis into their childhood and then further regressed into previous life. And they were speaking. It was very interesting because although I'd already kind of believed in reincarnation, it kind of further fortified my belief, my understanding. And each of them were taken back to a previous life and they were recorded speaking different languages that none of them knew. I think they must have purposely picked these ladies because none of them knew how to speak any other language. They'd been born in Australia, practically never gone out of Australia. So one of them was in France back in the 18th century, and she lived in a very nice chateau, and she was speaking a very particular dialect of French. And they took her to the place that she described, and as she was rounding the corner, she started breaking down emotionally, and she says, yes, I remember the house, it's just round here, there was a stained glass window, and then there was a fire, and we were all killed in the fire. And then she came round the corner, and then there was the ruin of the house was there. But she was still very much attached. You can see that attachment was there. She had a very wealthy situation. Next life, she never had that. She'd left it behind, and nobody was using it. There's another interesting one, just for your own entertainment. There was one lady who had been taken back, and she was in Aberdeen University in a previous life. She was a student. No, she was a doctor, a professor in Aberdeen University. She gave her name, and she was actually a man in a previous life. She gave her name, and they checked the old register from the 1800s, and they seen his name in the register. And he described his office, but when they looked at the building, it wasn't there, so they thought there's some discrepancy. And then some bright spark decided, let's look at the plans of the building when it was back then in the 18th century. And they looked and they seen that actually had been some modifications since then, and there was an office, there was a staircase, and there was an office went up, and nobody knew about it. So various things like that. So if we can understand it, yeah, this is true, that some lives we may be very wealthy, we may be very important. Other lives we may be not so much like that. In other lives we may be not even in the human form of life, because the same spirit spark is occupying all these different bodies. There's 6 symptoms of consciousness. Can anyone remember any or all of them? The evidence or the symptom of the soul is consciousness, right? Consciousness. No, it's another thing. So the 6 symptoms of consciousness or life is that one comes into being, they grow, maintain for some time, produce some offspring, dwindle, and then vanish. So these are there in all the different species, which is common to all the species. And it takes consciousness for that to happen. So Prabhupada, first of all, he says, don't try to understand God. First, try to understand sample of God, which is the soul, yourself. We can understand our own nature, then we can understand that there's a supreme being who also has a supreme will. So the simple philosophy of Krishna consciousness is that if we water the root of the tree, the whole tree will be nourished very nicely. And by that we mean if we serve Krishna, who is the origin, the cause of all causes, serve a karana karanam, then everything else will become satisfied automatically. So this is the lesson which young Prahlad Maharaj is going to try to convey to his demoniac father in due course. And see how that pastime unfolds. We'll just stop here. Anyone get any quick questions? Okay. It's going Govinda ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande.